You're listening to WRUU-LP, Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with global soul.
Check, check, 1, 2. Look like a little country, some rock and roll and blues, 'cause we sure love playing for good people like you. Let me know if you can hear me. Check, check, 1, 2.
Welcome to Music Local and Sustainable, the radio show that features discussions with and the music of local musicians. I am your host, Dave Lake. Tonight we have the Jackson Evans Trio. The trio has been a mainstay of Saturday nights at Casimir Lounge at the Mansion on Forsyth Park. The trio features Jackson Evans on guitar, Linus Enochson on bass, and Robert Saunders on drums. Jackson Evans Trio, welcome to Music Local and Sustainable.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey.
Let me just have the band introduce themselves.
All right. You want to start, Robert?
Hey there. This is Robert Saunders. I play drums.
I'm Jackson Evans. I play guitar.
And I'm Linus Enochson, and I play the bass.
Why play jazz?
For me, it started as a reason to do something different. That was my way of rebelling, I guess. All the kids my age were playing rock and roll, and why would I do what everyone else was doing? So I got into jazz, and as I learned more about it, I got more into it just for what it is. It's definitely a passion of mine.
You did it as rebellion.
Yeah, which I think is true to the spirit of the music, right?
Robert, you play everything in town. So why jazz?
I found out that it was kind of the glue of all. It was like the bottom line of most of the music that I love, and pretty much it's awesome. Honestly, that's my reason.
Linus.
Oh, for me, I started out. I was a bassoonist until I started playing bass in my 20s, and it was just the broadest music or genre that I could find, where I could play the most styles and express myself in as many ways as I could musically.
Now, Robert, you're born and raised here in Savannah.
Yes.
And one thinks of Savannah and jazz sort of in the same light.
Mm-hmm.
But when I think Utah jazz, I think basketball. I don't think necessarily music. Is there a lot of jazz in Utah?
Well, there wasn't for years. I've made that joke. I've told people that the Utah jazz is a lie, but that's actually changing. BYU has cultivated an incredibly strong jazz program, and there's also a saxophonist who is named Caleb Chapman, who's really involved in jazz education throughout the world. He's the president-elect of the Jazz Educators Network, which is the national foundation that they have an annual convention, but he has a program based in American Fork, Utah, that has something like 17 bands. Not all jazz, but it's like an after-school program that has become a feeder program to BYU. So there's a lot of really, really great musicians coming out of there. There's not a ton of gigs. I don't think I'm going to move back anytime soon. I'm certainly working more here than I would there. But after seeing those kids play last January, I saw them play at the Gen Conference in Louisville. I can't make the Utah Jazz is a lie joke anymore.
And most people don't realize that Europe has a rich jazz tradition and a lot of jazz players.
There's a tradition of the Scandinavian sound in jazz, and most people in Europe at least would recognize the music from Scandinavia with having like a certain sound, the Nordic.
How does that differ from other European jazz?
It's usually a little bit more melodic, a little serene. I guess jazz is usually feeding off of the local traditional music, and it's the same up there, and our traditional music is kind of there and very melodic in a way that, it's kind of rubbed off on the jazz tradition.
I think of it as being influenced by Bill Evans. Is that correct? To think of it to have a stylistic comparison?
Yeah, I would agree to you to a certain. I would say that it's also that I think Bill Evans might have been influenced
Okay.
by that, that traditional sound. I was really fascinated with that. So I'm sure it's a mutual connection there.
So why don't we do a number?
All right. Let's do that one that we sound checked with.
Sure.
A little walk, don't run. 1, 2, 1, 2.
Now, that's a cover of a rock and roll song, right?
Haha! Actually, it was a jazz song first. Johnny Smith wrote that as an etude that matches the chords of Softly as in a Morning Sunrise. And Chet Atkins heard a recording of it, and the Ventures heard a recording of that, and that's how the song became a rock and roll song.
Often I've heard this approach called straight ahead jazz,
Mm-hmm.
where you play the theme, you do the various improvisational parts, and then you go back to the theme.
Yeah, that's the standard form for straight ahead jazz, yeah.
Is that what y'all tend to do, straight ahead jazz?
A mix. I think we're all sort of children of the new generation of jazz musicians that had the internet. We can hear music from all over the world now. I think in the past, music came through record stores, and you had to wait until that record showed up at the record store, then you get it, listen to it, emulate it, and so that's, I think, how you have the Kansas City sound, or the Mississippi Blues got their own things developed regionally, and now you can hear anything from anywhere at any time, and I think you hear that in what's happening in music. So we play some straight ahead jazz. Sometimes we get a little bit funky, play some sort of gypsy style stuff. We have some Latin influences. I have a sort of fondness for writing sort of novelty songs that are just kind of fun and quirky. So I think musicians our age have to be more varied in their stylistic approach than what happened in the past, and that makes us harder to pigeonhole. When people ask me what kind of music we play, it's hard to say, because it's all jazz in that we are improvising and approaching it different ways, and most of the time I'd say we play the theme, improvise, play the theme, but it's also not playing the same jazz songs that you're used to hearing.
When you do some of the different styles, some of the different Latin styles or funk compared to straight ahead jazz, does that have any particular additional demands, say, on percussion, Robert?
Definitely does. At a moment's notice in a tune, it can honestly go anywhere, so I kind of have to be on my toes and be able to adapt to whatever. Like at the drop of a dime, we can go from a swing into a Latin-esque type groove, or it could turn into a quasi-funk kind of drive. So honestly, the man on me, I got to be on my toes and have really big ears.
A lot of the variation that we have in our style is on Robert's shoulders. That's very much the case. It's what he brings to the table can totally change the vibe of a song. We might approach it just doing what we normally do, and then he does something, and it's breathes totally new life into it.
I noticed with this piece you were using the brushes.
Yes.
Is that pretty standard for most of what you do with the jazz band?
With this particular group, it's from setting to setting. Actually, I wish I played brushes more often. There's a good couple tunes in the set that we usually do where it demands brushes. It's really nice, soft, delicate ballads and tunes and everything. So definitely then, but it varies from situation to situation. I have to be able to adapt.
This is a teeny room.
Yes.
Your recording equipment thanks him for using brushes, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yes. We're in the studio recording this, and it's relatively small. It's Savannah's own tiny desk, I guess.
Yeah. I like what you guys have going on in here. The room sounds nice.
Yeah. Do these different styles put additional strain on the bass player too, Linus?
Of course it does. We all have to react to it, and that's one of the fun parts of playing jazz, is that as a group you have to be very organic, and if someone else gives you an input or a different style or some small signals, you can either follow it, or if, for example, Robert starts playing changes up the style a bit, then I can choose to follow him and the song will take a new turn, or I can hold back and let the differences kind of speak for themselves and work with the contrast. So we all react to each other.
Now, does this occur at rehearsals, or does this occur on stage?
Mostly on stage. I think that's one of the fun parts about jazz is if you're not listening and responding, you're doing it wrong.
Definitely doing it wrong.
So I very much like things to be spontaneous. I don't know about these guys for sure, but I would guess that everyone up here gets bored if things happen the same way too many times.
Yeah. You need that constant refreshing, and you never know what's going to come next, and you don't know where the tension is going to come in, and then once you get into a nice tense moment, you're like, ooh, that's good, and you're ready for that release.
Let's do a couple original tunes for you that kind of demonstrate the differences in style, sort of our breadth, and then also some differences in feel and things.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Let's do Red and White first, and then maybe Americana. certain death is true. And it's the tailor's games weren't always the same. He had a different use for needle and thread to cheer his wife and spice up her life. He brought her gifts that once belonged to the dead. Red and white, pink satin at night. Two lovers in arms, one lying in harm's way. Young princess found Granny's dress. She hemmed it up so she could go to the prom. Her dates writ tight, told her they lied. His pointed coattails were tucked up behind. Red and white, pink satin at night. Two lovers in arms, one lying in red and white, pink satin at night. Two lovers in arms, one lying in harm's way. The devil's arms and the devil's charms, they moved about the room floating on breath. Her promenade in a satin cascade. Her first soft kiss just preceded her death. Red and white, pink satin at night. Two lovers in arms, one lying in harm's way.
Well, on that one, Robert switched to the sticks.
Yes.
Now you have a variety of sticks there of all
Yes.
different
Yes.
natures. What are the differences between them?
Well, different materials. Most are wood. Most of them are American hickory, but I also have a couple in here that are maple, which is a lighter, less dense wood. It gives off a different feel in the hands, and also gives off a different tone out of the drums and cymbals.
The hickory ones are better for barbecuing too.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. They smell great. They smell amazing. These, then you have some of your specialty sticks. Like I have a pair that also have mallets on the back, so I can go from playing sticks to doing a cymbal swell, dramatic cymbal swells, right on the drop of a dime. That is my daughter out there. I also have what are called hot rods, which are basically tiny dowels of birch wood all bundled together, and it gives off a different sound. So I can, with most of my sticks, I can go from a regular stick tone that you hear to something super soft like a mallet, to a stick tone that's not as obtrusive with the rods. And last but not least, I have my brushes, which gives off the softest of all my articulations. But the cool thing with brushes is also, which is a staple in jazz, is you can sweep across the drums. So that's what's in my stick bag.
Great. Now notice that you're playing a Benedetto guitar.
Oh yes, the best.
What makes the Benedetto guitar the best?
Well, Bob Benedetto has been building and designing guitars since the 60s. He literally wrote the book on how to do it. Before him, there were only a few people in the country that had mastered the art. He came through, and he was in Pennsylvania first, I believe, and then Florida, and then moved the operation to Savannah in, must have been 2006, because I got my first one in 2008. And then this one is a custom model they built for me. It's a chambered solid body. It's not a carved arch top like most of their guitars. But it has the F-holes cut into it, so it looks real jazzy, and only one pickup. But it's a little more, I don't know if you noticed, I use a little bit of distortion and some different effects, which is not very jazz guitarist of me, and this guitar works really, really well for that. They're a really neat resource to have in Savannah. They bring in a lot of really cool players. Howard Paul, the CEO, is a really good friend, and just having them down the street is really cool. Their head builder does all my setups, Damon Myland. Linus plays in a band with him too. It's neat to have that resource around. They're good people, and it's fun to be able to see what they're doing.
Now, do you have an arch top as well as this?
I do. It's a Bravo, which is their laminate arch top, so it's more feedback resistant than the carved ones. A lot of times when I play my gigs with Maggie, my wife that sings and plays bass, because we don't have a drummer, I'll use that guitar because it has a little more whomp. I can be a little more rhythmic on it. So that's kind of how I draw when I use this guitar or that one, is if there's a drummer and I'm playing less rhythmically and more single note stuff, I'll use this guitar, and if I'm expected to drive the rhythm, then I'll use the other instrument.
So right now you use only Benedetto guitars?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm fortunate they have me as an endorsing artist up on their website and everything. It's a benefit of having them as friends. It's a big honor too. It's a select group of people that get to be involved like that. I'm pretty honored.
And my understanding, talking to Howard Paul, that the chambered solid bodies are very rare.
Yeah. Well, I mean, all of them are very rare. I think
they make 100 a year.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
so, but yeah, this particular model, they've maybe done 10 of them now, maybe. Probably 200 or 300 without the F-holes. The F-holes are borrowed from a different model, and they've got a few of them out there, but not very many. And this guitar itself is completely unique. They've never done anything exactly like it. I had them move the controls into a different position so I can do those kinds of noises with it. There's one other one that has a single pickup, but I think that's a deeper body depth. I mean, it's crazy how custom it is what they're doing. They're very, very unique.
Yeah, it being at their workshop, it looks like pretty much every instrument is custom, in a sense.
Yeah, for the most part, I think that's probably. I don't know the statistics, but I would guess most of their work is one-off and custom in some way. They do have standard model specs, and I think they make a good amount of instruments to those specs. But if I had to guess, I'd say half and half, maybe.
It also sounds unlike a major automobile company. They're more like Rolls-Royce in the sense that they will build to order.
Oh, of course.
Rather than building spec models.
Yeah,
they really build to order.
Yeah, so that's one of the coolest things about the whole company is when somebody wants a guitar, they can call and talk to Howard personally, which I think is a pretty amazing thing, that you can talk directly to the CEO if you ask for it. That's pretty cool, and they'll build whatever you want.
So, Linus, when you're doing jazz, do you do bowing as well?
Well, yeah, you can, and I have been on occasions, but I don't do it that often, mostly because of the sound is changing, which means the pickups might produce the sound a little differently through an amplifier. So it depends on, if I play acoustically, it's much easier to transcend between to switch between the two sounds. Yeah, and I'm looking for a good way to be able to do it more.
You have a great percussionist in this group, so you really don't have to be the percussion aspect. But do you sometimes play where you have to sort of be percussion as well?
Well, yeah, I guess I do. If there's no drummer around, then it's either up to me or the chord instrument, of course, and you can switch it up. But from time to time, yes, of course.
How would you play different without a drummer?
I would play more basic and clear rhythmically, maybe simpler rhythms, just to keep a drive and a foundation for the group. For example, if I play in a duo with Jackson, he will probably be the rhythm while I'm soloing and while if he's singing. But when he's soloing, then I will have to take responsibility for
Locking in a groove.
for making a groove that makes sense for the song, that is easy to follow. And
Now, in bluegrass, you'll often see them slap the bass. Do you ever do that in jazz?
well, you can, and I have done it, but it's not something you do every day, especially not if you have a drum, and not to that extent. But you can use the slap of a string to the fretboard as a almost like a snare drum between the notes. Yeah.
Should we go to West Montgomery and you can set something up like that?